Welcome, I'm Dr. Melina Roberts, and I want to talk about ways that we can assess the quality of your immune system. Because I think we're talking a lot about the immune system, and in our practice, we've talked about the immune system a lot for a long period of time. This isn't a new topic for us. But I think that it becomes an emphasis right now, and people are wondering, what is actually the quality of my immune system? What I found that in our practice, one of the ways that we can actually assess the immune system is through a test that we do within our clinic called dark field microscopy. And dark field microscopy, what it is the prick of the fingertip. We look at the live blood cells underneath the microscope, and we can get an idea of what the body's internal environment looks like, because from that one drop of blood, that's the same blood that circulates throughout the entire body. So we get lots of information from just that one drop of blood. And within that drop of blood, what we're able to see is we're able to see a person's white blood cells. And by looking at a person's white blood cells, we can get an idea of how well their immune system is functioning. Now, one of the things that we look at is we look at the number of white blood cells a person has. Now, when you do conventional blood work with your GP, they will be looking at that blood work, and they will give you a quantitative analysis of that white blood cells. So they'll tell you how many white blood cells you have, and if how many of each type of white blood cells you have. And so this gives you like a quantitative idea of where your white blood cells are at. And this is great information because we know, even looking at it dark field, if we have a low amount of white blood cells, that the immune system is deficient. And so we're able to see that on the dark field, and with conventional testing, you're able to see that. But what you're not able to look at is actually at a few other components that will actually tell us the quality of those cells, not just the quantity of those cells. Now, the other thing that we'd be looking at is the size of those cells. So the size of those white blood cells should look like big, white, puffy clouds. And so they should be about 3 times the size of a red blood cell, a normal, healthy red blood cell. So if these white blood cells are on the smaller side, this would tell us that there's some deficiencies happening in terms of the immune system. So first of all, we're looking at the number of white blood cells, then we're looking at the size of those white blood cells, and the other thing that we're looking at in terms of those white blood cells is the activity within those white blood cells. So what we should see is that those white blood cells should look like big white puffy clouds, and when we look carefully at them, we should see some activity going on within those cells. And we're able to see that activity on that live blood cell analysis, on that dark field microscopy, because what's happening is that this is actually a live blood cell analysis that hasn't been manipulated in any way, and we're actually able to see the activity, some of that activity that's happening within those cells. And so when we see lots of activity happening within those white blood cells, it tells us that that immune system is working well. So these are things that we would look at when we're looking at the dark field microscopy, and this would give us great insight into how your immune system is operating. And so if we see a good amount of white blood cells, if we see that they're a good size and we see that there's good activity, then we know this person has a strong immune system. And if we see any sort of other deficiencies, so we see a low amount of white blood cells, we see the smaller white blood cells, or we see a lack of activity happening in those white blood cells. That would tell us that there's some deficiencies in terms of those white blood cells, and that we would need to be working on those certain areas. We either need to help the body to start making white blood cells, we need to start to get the body to make larger white blood cells, or we need to actually turn on the activity within those white blood cells. So that would give us more insight into how we are going to be able to get that immune system to function better. All right, so thank you so much for listening. I hope that gives you some more insight into how we look at the immune system a little bit differently than other people would be looking at the immune system, and how that dark field microscopy gives us a lot more insight into the actual function of that immune system. All right, so thank you so much for watching. I encourage you to share this with your friends and family, to press the like button, to press the subscribe button, to make a comment below, and until next time, continue to learn, grow, and build health. And I'll see you in the next video.